All right, if there's no major objections, I think we're going to kick it off and get started. Just before I say anything else, this is an awesome turnout. This is a small county. Britain's a small area. I know not everyone here from Britain. We have people from Port Townsend, people from Quilcene. Anybody come from outside Jefferson County? All right. And where'd you come from? Port Angeles. Wow. All right. Awesome. So I really appreciate everybody coming. My name is Dan Ventura. I'm president of the Northwood Canal Chamber of Commerce. This meeting is put together as a joint session or cooperative session between the Northwood Canal Chamber of Commerce and the Chamber of Jefferson County. So we're all in this together, except for those folks who follow. and we're working together to kind of talk about this issue. We've got some elected officials who are going to speak about this issue as much as they can. We're going to have some time at the end for an open forum. So firstly, let me just talk to you about the format and how we're going to do this, and if anybody thinks it's a terrible idea, so what we're going to do is I'm going to give an introduction and we're going to summarize kind of why we're here and what's going on. Then we're going to turn it over to the speakers. Judge Mack in the Jefferson County Superior Court is going to be the first speaker. Please everyone keep in mind that he is a judge and there are some significant ethical boundaries and guidelines. He can't talk about any current cases or pending cases or things that might be used to question his impartiality in the judgment of trials. So there's going to be a lot that he may not be able to answer, but I think he's going to be able to give us a lot of good information about the structure, the rules, the legislation, and some of the big picture reasons as to why things the way they are right now. What Judge Mack has done, or during Judge Mack's time talking, if you have questions, raise your hand. We've got Marcia Kelbon here from Quilcene, who is reinventing her role as moderator. She did it last Brandon Town Hall. She's going to come and pass out a ticket to you as you have your hand raised. It'll have a number on it, do it just like the butcher. Once Judge Mack is finished, we're going to call through those numbers. Marcia's going to call on people, give you time to ask your question, and the speaker will be able to answer those questions. We'll try to keep it succinct, but we do have some time tonight and we can get a little bit in depth. We're going to try to limit those follow-up questions and try to keep that question to that speaker. Once that's complete, we'll move on to Deputy Prosecutor Phillips. Again, she's going to have some restrictions and some boundaries about what she's allowed to talk about with specific cases, but she's probably going to have a little bit more flexibility because she is representing the county, representing us as the people as a prosecutor, and doesn't have to be neutral and impartial. While she's speaking, raise your hand. Marcia will again give out some more tickets, and then we'll kind of go through those numbers and call everybody in order, get your questions asked and answered. At that point, we're going to have Scott Rogers speak for a little bit. He is the president of the Chamber of Jefferson County, and he has some history in the security industry, and he can talk a little bit about locks and cameras and floodlights, just giving us a little bit of information about what we can do. And then at the end, we're going to wrap up and we're going to allow kind of some open forum crosstalk with the time that's remaining. Marcia, again, will give out tickets as you guys raise your hands to think of a question. And then we'll go ahead and allow those questions to be a little bit more flexible to where if folks from the audience want to raise their hand and give some insight, I think we'll be able to do that. We had a great group here tonight. Major announcement, unfortunately, the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office I able to attend. I did get an email on my way here from Sheriff Joe Knoll. He's very interested, really wanted to be there, really wanted them to attend, but there's a significant emergency in Port Hadlock going on that's really all hands on deck. So they had planned to attend, we had been in constant contact, they were extremely helpful and forthright and forthcoming, but I don't think anyone could foresee this happening. Maybe it's just a Friday night thing. So that's the forum and the method that we're going to use to keep this discussion effective. It is being videotaped, so if you don't want to be on video, don't stand up and ask a question, but it's being videotaped so that we can have a record of everything, and everything said, everything discussed. We can submit that to the county so they can review it, and it can be available publicly that anybody wants to have that video, cut pieces of it, put it on their social media, do whatever they want with that video, they're more than welcome to. So that's something that we're doing for everyone. Okay, so organizations and people that have helped organize this event, the Northwood Canal Chamber of Commerce This is going to be the first of many events coming throughout the next year. It will be informational and kind of community guided. We're a small organization, but we're growing, and we need more help and more volunteers. And even if you don't own a business, you can become an associate member and assist in guiding the direction of what's happening in our community and getting information put together so that we can understand what direction people want to go, what's important, how we can lobby our elected officials, our state officials, look for grants, find money to do the things that we all need to do, because, you know, there's not a lot of people in this county, less than 40,000, and, you know, we all need to step up and do it ourselves and want something to be done. In addition, from the Chamber of Jefferson County, we've got Scott Rogers, who is the president, and we've got Jordan Eads, who really came together to help start to link the divide between the Chamber of Jefferson County, which has a lot of Port Townsend members, as well as members throughout the county, and our Northwood Canal Chamber of Commerce, which is really more associated to South County. So thank you very much for both of you guys doing that. I noticed as everybody walked in the room, the first thing they did was look up and look around. This building is beautiful, this campus is beautiful, this facility is beautiful. This has been provided to us at the smallest possible nominal fee by the Boy Scouts of America, the Scouts of America, and that's the director in the back is Josh Cunningham. The area is available for rental for parties, it's available for rental for weddings, it's available for rental for public meetings, not just this building, but cabins and other things. I think they had a couple of weddings here this year, and if you have friends in the area who want to do an event, everybody knows Britain's awesome, you know, reach out to Josh. And then finally, and actually most importantly, why are we doing this and sitting around here and having a format and having a discussion? Well, it all stems from the Britain Town Hall event series that was put together, and that was organized 100% by themselves. Shelley Yarnell and Andrew Schwartz. Andrew's in the back, taking video. Shelley is hiding over here. The two of them have been extremely important in helping to organize people in Britain, get people in Britain together to talk about community events. They just did everything themselves with town hall events. Now we're supporting it through the Northwood Canal Chamber of Commerce, and we wouldn't be here without you guys. Okay, so the topic at hand, property crime and safety in Jefferson County. Most everybody here is from South County. South County might have a little bit of different needs from Port Townsend, but we're all in Jefferson County. We're all dealing with the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. We're dealing with the same courts, the same prosecutors, the same judges, and we all really are having some of the same issues. They might just be a little bit different flavor. So through the work with the Chamber of Jefferson County, we're going to try and repeat this meeting up in Port Townsend, and I really want everybody to be able to see that we all have the same concerns and the same problems, and we're not that different. Really important for us long term. So the property crime that's been happening have been of a couple of different flavors. I think the scariest and most recent one is burglary. We also have some issues with vandalism, although I think South County, maybe the vandalism isn't quite as bad as it is in Port Townsend and some other areas, but it definitely happens. And then we have theft of construction materials. I know the cemeteries have theft of construction materials. I believe the Quilcene Community Center may have had some thefts. And construction materials just are disappearing at a rapid rate, and it's really hard to secure. And because people that are doing this might feel like, you know, they can get away with it because we don't have the resources to go after them, that's one of the main things that they're doing. The reason I wanted this event now and why I put it together now is my store got broken into. My wife, Summer, and I own the store up in the corner here, Cove RV and Country Store. And in one night, we had 5 locations in Britain burglarized. Smashed windows, items stolen. Thankfully, there wasn't a lot of destructive vandalism. It wasn't kids, it was an adult. But they were just looking for things to sell or monetary value. Could have been way worse. But the places that were burglarized are Whitney Gardens, the Halfway House. I think they probably had the biggest loss. Cash registers stolen, all the jewelry from Jeff's Antique Shop in there stolen. The Britain Post Office was broken into. The Cove RV and Country Store, and then Penny Creek Scale House. So these all happened at one night. There's videos of the person that did this. I don't know that our speakers will be able to talk directly about this person because they both, one or more may be involved in the case. They may not be able to answer that directly. But that person has been arrested. My understanding is they're in jail in Kitsap County now on several burglary charges in Kitsap. I believe this person may have committed similar crimes in Kelbon County and been arrested a month or two ago and then released on bail. And we also, I suspect that there was some same burglaries and open warrants in Mason County. So one person can wreak all this havoc. In Port Ludlow, Shine Micro got broken into. The post office in Port Ludlow got broken into. And the Chevron station in Port Ludlow got broken into. This is all in the last month or two. In Port Hadlock, the post office got broken into, if you're noticing a theme, and the Valley Tavern got broken into. I don't have a ton of information from Port Townsend, but I do know that the McDonald's was vandalized with some graffiti. I don't know what the graffiti said. I've been told that it had some hate aspect to it, but it was vandalized with some graffiti. And back in May, it's a little while ago, 2 McDonald's employees in Port Townsend were robbed. Late at night when they were depositing cash at the Kitsap Bank, they were sprayed with bear mace and robbed of, I don't know, a few $1,000s. So property crimes, violent crimes, vandalism, you know, maybe it's the same people, maybe it's the same group, but it's all stuff that we need to get under control. Again, the Northwood Pinellas Chamber of Commerce is sponsoring this event and is going to be sponsoring more events. The next one that we plan to do is probably going to be associated with public health, and it's not fully formed yet, but it might be something about aging in South County. It upsets me to hear some people say, I have to leave, I can't stay here year round because I have to go to my doctors. People having to travel so far for their doctors, and really restricting people able to stay here throughout their entire retirement and not just the first few years of their retirement. There's also a big desire for a neighborhood crime watch. Everybody's been talking about it. I've heard it from a lot of people. Let's get an organization together. Let's get some money for gas. Let's start patrolling the areas. If you watch Facebook and social media and you hear people talking, everybody is talking about, I saw this vehicle, I saw that vehicle. And I think a lot of it is awesome and it's right. And that vehicle was somebody casing it. It was somebody with bad intentions or drug addictions, looking for empty houses, looking for easy pickings. But in at least a few cases that I've seen, it's been our neighbors. So I think a crime watch is definitely something that's necessary, neighborhood watches, block watches, etc. But with some kind of structure and organized fashion. And I don't know the answer on how to do it or how to set it up, but I'd be willing to bet that there's money out there, either through federal funds or county funds or state funds, to support some of the infrastructure needed to do that. But what we need is some people to get together and say, okay, I want to get involved, donate my time to this, set up an organization like that can go on, in the future. So if you're interested in that, we'll put some information out, we'll send an email thanking everyone for coming and signed up. You can respond back. I don't know how we're going to organize it, but we will try to organize something in that respect. Okay, so I've introduced the speakers. I've introduced our moderator, Marcia Kelbon, and I think now I'm going to turn the microphone over to Judge Brandon Mack, Superior Court of Jefferson County. And again, Judge Mack has got to stay impartial. There's a lot he can't answer, but if he wants to talk to us about the structural issues and how he sees things and moving forward throughout his entire speaking time, just raise your hand. Marcia will make her way over, get you a ticket, and then we'll call on everybody numerically. All right, thanks everybody for coming, and let's go back.
Thank you so much for hosting. Fantastic place. I was mentioning earlier that I had a big stint where I was a camp counselor. After I graduated from college, I went for Outward Bound and did about 6 or 7 years in outdoor education and spent a lot of time in places like this, taking people outside and whatnot. And then my family moved to Seattle, and then we moved up to Quilcene. We lived in Quilcene for a few years, up Snow Creek Road for 3 years. So really fell in love with this part of the county. I had to pop into the Gooey Dock here just for a minute, just before I came over here. And then we moved up to Port Townsend a few years back because we were just spending too much time with our kids driving up into town. Decided to move up there. Before I became the Superior Court judge for Jefferson County, I was a family court commissioner in Kelbon County for about 5 years, 4 years there, working primarily on child abuse and child neglect cases, doing protection orders, divorces, custody cases, everything family related, not criminal at all for that time. And then before becoming the family court commissioner, I was at the Attorney General's office. I was an assistant Attorney General, representing mostly the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, working on their child abuse and child neglect cases, taking cases, to hearing or helping, helping resolve family issues where, kids were really struggling. And so I got into that job right out of law school. So really from 2009 to 2019, as an attorney, I was really focused on addressing child abuse and child neglect issues. And definitely got familiar and came to understand the level of the crisis that our communities are living in when it comes to opioids. Obviously now it's fentanyl, it was methamphetamines, there's obviously still lots of methamphetamines. You having a hard time hearing me? Is that better? I'm just seeing a little of that. Yeah, so I guess I would say from 2009 to 2019, just spending a lot of time getting an understanding as to the level of challenge that our communities are facing with the opioid epidemic, and just watching it firsthand, watching people not being able to parent because they're living with that and their children are getting removed. And a really great part of being in the court system is you do get a chance to see a lot of people turn that corner, especially when their kids are taken away from them. Usually that's the first time where somebody will really wake up. I mean, you see them go to jail and then continue to use, but when their kids get taken away, sometimes that's the thing that will trigger somebody to get the treatment that they need and turn their life around. So it's been an honor and I've really enjoyed watching that over the years as I was the court commissioner there. And then I guess it was last fall, Judge Harper announced his retirement here in Jefferson County, and so I started on February 1st. And I've done a lot of work with Prosecutor Phillips here over the last, I guess I've been doing this for about 8 months, and just getting a chance to see what's, the extent of the issues in Jefferson County. You mentioned a lot of them, a lot of stolen vehicles. I don't think that was necessarily mentioned. Theft of obviously property, people stealing things and then putting it on Facebook Marketplace. We see, and I have to commend the prosecutor's office and the sheriff's department. I'm sad that I think either Sheriff Knoll or Detective Anglin aren't going to be here, because I could obviously get a chance to see their work firsthand, and I'm sure there's a lot of frustrated individuals who have things that are stolen who never really get anything. Nothing happens of it, and that frustration is obviously hugely real. What I see is the cases where they actually get information, and to watch them. The case that you mentioned, we're both familiar with, and we're not going to talk about it, but I know all of the background and the work that they've been doing on that, and it's just impressive on a lot of levels. Every day we're seeing in court people engaged in criminal behavior, and a lot of times their rap sheets are long. They've been doing it for a long time. So I'm really excited to be here. I appreciate y'all inviting me. I'm really interested in mostly listening and expressing what I can, but I'll just say, I'll be pretty honest that my learning curve is, I went to law school and jumped right into the child abuse and child neglect cases, and basically spent about 9 years doing that, and then another 4 years in family court. So I'm still really learning about criminal law. And one of the things that I'm appreciating about the role of the judge is how much you do get a chance to see the impact that it has on victims. And one of the things that I'm interested about changing in our system a little bit more is the voice that victims have in court. Like, a lot of times it's the state, and then there's the defendant, and the defendant has all these constitutional rights, right? The right to remain silent, the right to a trial, the right to confront your witnesses, and our Constitution's really focused on all of their constitutional rights. And the state is tasked with ensuring the public safety, and they have their role, and the victim is like on the sideline, right? They're a witness, and they work hand in hand with the prosecutor's office, but how do we get their voice into court more at the appropriate times or what in whatever the process is certainly something that I'm really interested in, and obviously it depends on the different crimes. But anyway, that's just a little bit about me and who I am and how I got to be where I am, and I'm really interested in what kind of questions or mainly comments or just things you think I need to know and whether you wonder whether I do or not.
Sam Roberts.
That's okay. Well, there's probably not that many, it looks like, so go for it.
There's me.
Yeah. That's
You number one?
I'm number one.
First in line?
So in a lot of cases, we find that as people are picked up again and again, and they have warrants outstanding, 7, 8, or 20 outstanding warrants. Why are these people on the streets, and how can we get them off the streets and into some sort of help for them and us?
Yeah. Yeah, so the question was, is this on? Okay. The question, there you go. the question was, how are these people who somebody might get picked up, they might have, I think it was 70, 80 warrants, or however many warrants does somebody have. How do they get back out to continue to commit the crimes that they're committing, and why aren't they just being locked up, and how can we put them away or keep them off the streets? Is that fair? Is that kind of what you said?
Or get them help.
Or get them help.
Whatever the need is.
Yeah, certainly.
But we also have a need, to be safe.
Yeah, absolutely. So when somebody gets arrested and they have their initial hearing, the prosecuting attorney's office they'll usually update the court, and I've got access to the judicial information system that has somebody's criminal history. And you start from a presumption that when somebody's charged with a crime or they're arrested, first you determine whether there's probable cause that they committed the crime, and then the next step is you decide whether to release them pending trial, or should they stay locked up while you're pending trial. And obviously, the Washington State Constitution says that everybody should be released unless it's a capital trial, unless it's a murder, first-degree murder, capital case. They should be released pending trial, unless they present a risk to the community, unless they are a flight risk, or if they are likely to tamper with a witness. Did I miss anything? Those are the sort of the big things that you're looking at. And my goal, obviously, is to try to have it be so that when somebody is awaiting trial, they wouldn't be in jail if those three things don't apply. If they wouldn't be a risk to the community, if they're not a flight risk, and they're not likely to interfere with the witness. So the prosecutor will often say, okay, this person has 2 outstanding warrants, and so we propose that bail would be $25,000. And it depends on the type of case, what the level of the case is. And so if they have outstanding warrants, usually the bail is going to be higher. I mean, in general, if somebody has 1 outstanding warrant, and a lot of times even if I were to release them, then the law enforcement agency, if it's an extraditable warrant to a different county, they would go over there. The crimes that I see, I'll be honest, the ones that come into me, and certainly I encourage Prosecutor Phillips just to weigh in if she sees different, are people who have committed previous crimes, but they've generally done, they're generally resolved that situation, and then now they have a new one, or like, and I haven't been here long enough, so my record is like, if I come back in 4 years, I think we'd have a lot more to say, well, what about this case, or what about that case, because, you know, I haven't been doing it long enough necessarily to say, like, well, that person I released, and then they went and committed that crime. There's probably those instances, without a doubt. But generally my goal is, okay, I'm gonna set the bail to the extent that they're in jail, and we have some people who've been in jail a year, 2 years while they're waiting their trial because they're complicated, but trials should happen quicker than that. And if they're released, if they post bail, or if they are released, that, you know, they're gonna show back up to court. And not everybody does that, but also our system generally isn't set up to say, okay, we're just going to keep you in jail until you go to trial. Like, our county doesn't want that. We have a hard enough time staffing our jail as it is, right? And then especially when we had COVID, when our jail basically said, we want as few people in jail as possible. And our numbers have gone back up since COVID, but it's not a great answer to your question, but that's sort of how the analysis works.
Thanks, Robert. Danny, I guess this is actually right here, Shelley, you have another one?
I have a letter that came in from our town hall mailing list, and
Should I pick up your money?
Here, sure.
Sure.
See if we can just,
Did you get working?
well, I think if it wasn't working. Let's see. Right now, if it doesn't work, that we can again. Is it working?
The scouts are here.
It's a hold, I wasn't holding it. Okay, here we go.
I have
You need
a
a Boy
letter
Scout, Girl Scout.
that came in from our town hall mailing list. This man was in the hospital, and he just was released, so he can't be here tonight. But he said Captain Ben Stamper recently came and spoke to the OCT board. I feel really bad for the guy. His frustration is sincere with no remedy in sight. I asked this question: crime is a growing matter in the South County area, with the likelihood of crime increasing. What is JCSO's 5-year plan to manage the impact of increased crime on South County residents? His answer, and he was frustrated to tell us, there is no plan. That's not satisfactory. I had been planning to attend the information session this evening, but I have a heart issue, so I can't do that. With that being said, I still have a concern question that I was planning to bring to tonight's event. Given the lack of dollars for more full-time deputies and still needing law enforcement coverage, can South County qualified citizens be deputized to help fill in the gaps? If not, why not? If there is nothing done to address the need and residents are attacked and broken into, is a lawsuit against the county our only remedy for their failure to do their job? The county must stop feel-good social programs and building boundary rounds in Port Townsend and focus those dollars to bring genuine solutions to genuine large problems, also known as crime and drug crimes. If possible, I respectfully request these questions be asked of the county employees and place them on the record for their statements. Thank you.
I don't know, Your Honor, if you want to tackle that.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, a lot of the comments sounded like they were directed at the sheriff's department, but and so I'm not going to speak for the sheriff's department, right? That's certainly Sheriff Knoll's position to address what their plan is, and the county commissioners as to what their plan is on the board level in terms of, you know, their work that they do with the sheriff and the judge. You know, I'm obviously in the judicial branch in a different area. And what the judicial system, or I guess what I would say is, in addressing that, is the fentanyl in Jefferson County, in Clallam County, and Kitsap County is out of control. It's cheap, it's potent, it's highly addictive, and it's everywhere. I mean, and you all don't need me to tell you that, but I mean, it's in our middle schools, it's in our high schools, you could have, I've got 2 teenagers at the Port Townsend school, and you know, there's not a day that goes by that I don't worry that all it takes is one person to say, hey, here's a little pill I found, I hear it's fun. You know, I'm hoping that my daughters aren't, You know, that I trust that they're gonna, but all it takes is one person, maybe they say, oh, it's my Ritalin, when it really is fentanyl. I mean, it's crazy and it's out of control, and, you know, all I'll say is that we need more resources to address that. And my hope is that along with addressing that and the plans that the Sheriff's Department has and the plans that, like, this is just coming from the judicial branch, right? I'm not necessarily trying to say, hey, if we're able to solve our fentanyl crisis, then all the property crime's going to go away, because there's plenty of people who are committing property crimes who aren't on fentanyl. There's a difference there, and they're highly connected in general, is my understanding. And so, if you can help somebody find their way out of that, whether it's requiring them to go to treatment, or a prison sentence, or whatever the circumstance is, to help them turn their life around, and we do get to see that on a daily basis. And yeah, I'll sort of defer to Prosecutor Phillips if she wants to address different things that her office is doing, and then anything she knows about the Sheriff's Department. And I don't know, would this be a good time to?
I was thinking maybe I can introduce myself, because a lot of the questions, like, I would like to respond to as well.
Yeah, I think one more public question that would be reserved for Judge Mack.
Oh, that's fine, that's fine.
Yes, we will come back to, with that same
I'm just
question.
gonna remember all of the questions that everybody asked so that I can answer them.
There's a couple here that actually were submitted by Dan, and maybe others, that relate to your first question, which was, when you're checking for a suspect's record. Is this working? Yeah. Into the mic. Hey, there we go. Okay, so when you're checking a suspect's records, if there are active warrants in a different jurisdiction, such as Kitsap County, does that come up with, and does that influence the ability to release that individual?
Yeah. So somebody, as I'm making that analysis as to whether they're a flight risk, I'm sitting there thinking, well, they've got an outstanding warrant out in Kitsap, so why do I think they would show up to my hearing? So that would make for a higher bail.
This one on to have that one work, and vice versa. That was the next question: is how is bail determined?
So the more severe the crime, generally the higher the bail is going to be. Like I said, if it was a murder case, there might not be any bail. And then if it's a lot of the people that get picked up are transient and don't have very many resources, so they might just be sitting in jail on $5,000 bail. So it's anywhere from usually from $1,000 to $500,000.
So last one here, and hopefully we're going to work. Yes. Have there been any recent changes in state legislation that tie your hands with respect to sentencing?
Nothing in the last 8 months that I can think of.
One back here.
How is it determined how many police officers are assigned to a population? How long have we had only 3 or 4 sheriffs assigned to Jefferson County? And does the population growth, how often is it determined when we should add more police officers? Do you know anything about that?
I do.
You hear that?
Did everybody hear the question? So I'll tell you more about myself in a minute. My name is Anna Phillips. I'm a deputy prosecuting attorney. I've been a prosecutor for 28 years. I've been a prosecutor in Jefferson County for the last 7 years. So I know something about this because I was a member of the Sheriff Citizens Advisory Committee. And I was actually the person who was the founding person who put that together a couple of sheriffs ago, together with another community member. And we had people from all over the county on that advisory board, which is now an official advisory board. And we wanted people from every corner of the county so that people could be heard and represented, and then return to their communities, ask questions, bring them into the advisory board, tell us what we could share our concerns with the sheriff directly. And in that way, we could kind of close the loop and really have those conversations. I'm not on that board anymore, but when I was on that board, we had a lot of conversation about staffing and deployment because these same questions were being raised. They're always being raised. I live in Quilcene myself. I live in South County. I know the frustrations. I hear you. So thank you for having us here tonight. It's really important to be here. But in terms of the staffing issues, what I can tell you from my experience is that at any given time, it depends on the time of day, right? So between 4 and 6 in the morning, there might be 2 people on, right? Different times of day, we have different staffing levels. People are not assigned to areas, to geography, although it's been the subject of some discussion. I don't think there's ever, been movement on it. So there was a time when I was on the advisory committee, we talked about and actually did try to do like a staffing study because the sheriff's department is a county department like all the other departments who go to the commissioners for money, right? And so they need money to fund the positions. But what I've seen over the time that I've lived here, which is, 10, 11 years, and then my time in the prosecutor's office, there was a time when I thought, when I was on that committee, that we needed more people, more sheriff's deputies. But I think, and I also work in the prosecutor's office, so I see the work. That's part of what I do. I think that the staffing study really showed that we didn't really need more sheriff's deputies. We needed sheriff's deputies to go where people needed them to go. So when people called, we needed to make sure that the sheriff's deputies were going on the calls, taking appropriate action, and doing their investigations. So a lot of people ask about South County. Is it because we don't have enough deputies? Is it because we're so far away? Why do we feel so isolated? Why do we feel we're not being served? Why does it take something like all these break-ins to get everybody's attention? So I think that those are frustrations I've heard this whole time, but just based on my own experience on the advisory committee and the staffing study and so on that was done, I don't think that the solution, and also because of my work as a prosecutor, is more deputies. I think it's something else, and so you can send email. I would encourage you to, the person who came and read that note from the person in the hospital, that was very compelling. And that's not the first time I've heard something like that. And I think that those are things that the sheriff does want to hear. He wants to hear about that. So I would encourage, besides the fact that this is being recorded, that could be sent to him as an email. And also, I don't know what the problem is with the mic, but I hear what you're saying.
Okay, we have actually 3 questions over here, I guess. So let's take them in order and make a decision if these are really going to stick with the judge here, or whether we need to kind of broaden it out. But I think for the next one, sir.
Yeah, in your experience, have you seen any activist organizations bailing some of these repeat offenders? If you have, can you elaborate a little bit more on that, please?
Is that right?
Anybody?
Yeah. I see friends bailing friends out.
Okay.
That's what in my experience, that's what I see. I see friends bailing friends out. That's awesome.
Sir, you have a question?
Yeah, and I don't know if you've seen.
And I don't really ever know. Yeah, I just get in the file, it's just sort of something from the bail bond company. It's not ever really any information that comes to me.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, just to
How long ago was your study done, and can the public see the study, the staffing study?
So,
Also, how do
yeah.
you get in touch with your sheriff over, how does this community start talking with that board?
So I don't know who the member is for South County right now. There should be a member from South County
There should be a member from South County on the board, so I might be able to find out for you, but you can also send an email to the sheriff,
Stan?
Joe Knoll, your elected sheriff, and you can send him an email and he'll respond, and you can say, I was at a forum, I heard about the Sheriff's Advisory Board, how do I get in touch with my representative?
So and he goes to those meetings.
And the study?
So the study was under another sheriff, so I don't know, I think it was, I wanna say it was 2016.
That's a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, and I'm just telling you that was my only experience that I could relate to you, but also I was just explaining also as a prosecutor, I see how they work and where they go, and I see that every day. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mickey Canada. I hear a lot about the need for medical services for a lot of these repeat offenders and stuff. So a couple of questions I have. One of them is, or statements actually, you can reply to if you want. Don't you think that the mental health thing that we hear about over and over and over again, we have crime, we have people, sometimes it's just a handful of people doing tons of crimes, or sometimes it's just like you said, the fentanyl and everything else. But don't you think that a lot of criminals are just looking at that going, hey, this is an easy mark, I'm just gonna claim like my brain is not working where it should be. You know, we see it all across the country, and the only result that I see out of it, from my personal just insight, is that it's not working. Crime's getting worse, clear, no matter whether it's a small community here, or small county here, or Seattle. It's that mental health thing, that thread is wearing really thin with the public, I think. And my opinion is, I think the prosecutors and judges need to step up and determine whether or not, is it really, are you really sick, or are you just, giving us the slide,
So I certainly hear how frustrated you are, and I'm sure that Judge Mack can speak to this as well, but when we have a person who's in court, who's claiming that they have, not a mental health issue that made them do the crime, but usually it comes through competency or other things like that, where they say, I don't understand the charges against me or whatever, they have to be evaluated by professionals, and we have to have reports, and the judge receives those reports from the professionals, and the prosecutor receives them, and the defense attorney receives them. So, and I trust those professionals who prepare them. I hear what you're saying, that you feel like people are leaning on that as an excuse, but I don't see that. I don't see it in my work in Jefferson County, but I hear what you're saying, and it's very much in the media. We do have people with real mental health issues, and many times they're dual diagnosis. They have mental health issues, and they're using drugs to, illicit drugs to try to treat their mental health condition, and they get into a really bad cycle. And we have a mental health court in our district court where we help people with things like that. We have a drug court that has a mental health component that the judge is a part of, and when people come in and they are trying to excuse their behavior or say they didn't understand it, that has to really be checked out by psychiatrists and doctors who have to write a report for the court. So that's what I can tell you about my experience in Jefferson County, but I hear what you're saying, that you see it around as kind of like an excuse. And I'll let the judge, because he has some experience with that too.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. A lot of, I'm not sure if this is, it seems to kind of come and go at different times. There we go.
It maybe the right.
Yeah, there's definitely not one thing that's going to work for everybody.
Sometimes you send people to prison and they come back and they just keep committing more crimes. And sometimes we just graduated somebody today, on Thursday from our drug court. He's in his mid-40s, he's got a long rap sheet, and he really,
he's got 650
days or four, I think it was
650 days of sobriety.
and that's amazing, but that's like one person, right?
There's so many people that are committing these crimes that, it's complicated, and I hear I'm sick of hearing about the mental health crisis. I just want to have the crime stop. I get that.
Thank you. I think Shelley had a.
Well, yeah, I just would say that Gene Ball, I believe, is our representative on the Sheriff's Advisory Board. those kinds of things disappear before they ever really happen. So, you know, to hear that that's gonna be here is great, but we wanna see something happen, not just hear about it.
Right, I recommend sending an email to somebody who has control over some of that, like the elected sheriff.
Well, that, we've done.
Yeah. So I mean, I wish I could solve your problem.
I would assume the county commissioners as well for setting budget,
Right.
correct?
Right, I think the county commissioners too, and I think also, I know because the sheriff's department has a schedule and we see it, it has a slot for South County where they can assign somebody, like let's say 4 people are working, right? They can assign somebody south. So that person could stay south of 104 during their shift, right? So I don't know if they do that, but I know it's on the schedule, right? So there is a slot that says south, because sometimes there are 3 people working or 4 people working. And they certainly could have that person who's assigned south stay south of 104. I don't know if they do that, but you could ask about that. You could say, I hear there's currently somebody assigned south. Do you still do that? All I can tell you is it's on the schedule.
So I'm gonna,
And I'll also just say, whether you have a dedicated South County sheriff or not, I mean, from the Coil to Brennan to, I mean, it's a lot of territory. And I think you're going to get more into this later tonight maybe, but, you know, cameras with the game cameras, the Ring doorbells, the lights, I mean, you know, a lot of those things. Those are the things that come in where I'm getting the warrants or I'm getting the police reports where it's, they captured the guy was walking in and he didn't know there was a camera that took this picture, and law enforcement's like, I know that guy. And, you know, so people individually, obviously, you know, taking those measures so that when they do come, you know, then you can send that information to the sheriff and they can track it down, because I see them tracking that down. It's just when my thing got stolen and there's nothing to go on. You know, we're never going to have enough sheriff deputies to not have somebody go down, you know, Snow Creek Road, and, you know, I mean, we're never going to have that. So the things that you can do to protect your own property, I think, are going to be pretty helpful.
so I'm gonna use a little moderate discretion. There's one more question back here. It seems like most of these are drawing you both in, so why don't we take the turn for Prosecutor Phillips to introduce herself and her role, and then continue with the questions, if that works?
Okay, right there. I'm not moving. All right, I already told you who I am. My name is Anna Phillips. I'm a deputy prosecuting attorney. I work for you. I work up in Port Townsend in the courthouse, and I prosecute crimes that occur all around the county. I work in Judge Mack's court primarily, which is the Superior Court. I'm the deputy assigned to also prosecute all of the juvenile cases. I have a lot of kids from South County in our juvenile court system, and Judge Mack is also the juvenile court judge in Superior Court. I've been a prosecutor for 28 years. I prosecuted in a larger jurisdiction before we moved here to raise our twins, who just went to college last year, out of Chamber High School. So I've prosecuted every kind of crime that you can think of. I was a gang prosecutor, I did sex crimes, I did just sort of everything you can think of in a larger jurisdiction, and we have all the same kinds of things here. Just different people. And so here I've prosecuted everything from, you know, murder cases to sex crimes, crimes against children, lots of theft, and lots of drug cases. Lots of drugs and lots of guns, I should say, actually, and those kind of go hand in hand. So I love my job. It's very satisfying. I feel very good about what I do when somebody is convicted. I don't celebrate. It's a tragedy usually all around. I feel like I did a good job. So even in the room tonight, I have one person here who was a juror on one of my cases, and I have one person here who was a victim in a crime in a case that I prosecuted, not a case that Judge Mack handled. And so it's always very gratifying when I come out into the community and I get to see people who I have crossed paths with before for many different reasons. And I get to see them and catch up a little bit and find out what they've been doing. And the case that I had of the person who was a victim of a crime was a case that we had to work very, very hard on, and we had to do a lot of investigation, and she was She really hung in there and understood the process, and part of what we do that's really important in our office is to represent victims of crimes. We are not their attorney, we work for you, for the state, but we're there to advocate, and we're there so that their voice can be heard. And I can still remember today when she spoke in court at the sentencing hearing, and it was extremely moving. So I find my work very gratifying. I've had an entire career in public service, and I consider it a great honor, and I also really love my job. So part of what I like to do is I like to be in the community. In juvenile court, I reach out when I'm in the schools a lot. I work collaboratively with people in schools and with law enforcement on juvenile crime issues. I like to make myself available to people so that they can contact me with their questions. I think living in a community like this, and it really is a community, even though we have a large county that spreads from Fort Townsend, I recently, well, not, maybe it was a year ago, God, it's hard to even remember when it was, but I prosecuted a timber theft case, well, a couple of them, actually. A huge timber theft case here that involved Snow Creek and Mount Walker, and that involved somebody who was a career timber thief, desecrating public land and cutting trees just about everywhere, who went to prison for 10 years, and that was just sort of completely unheard of. And so I'm not going to say his name because he has sort of relatives everywhere. But also, I prosecuted a case on DNR land over in south of Schwartz that involved cutting of old timber, old growth timber, and that was also very gratifying. So I consider it a real honor, and I love my job, and I love to be out in the public and answer questions. And I'm also a member of the community, so a lot of your frustrations I share. I live on the Coil Peninsula, and I take care of myself, and I don't know when somebody's going to come when I call, so I think a lot of you probably do the same thing. It doesn't mean I'm not expecting people to come, but we're pretty self-sufficient. And however, you know, if I need help, I know somebody's going to come and help me. But I do hear a lot of your frustrations. I am the prosecutor on the case involving the burglaries here. So I don't want to talk about the specifics of that case right now because it's a case it's not yet before the court exactly. She's in custody in Kitsap County, but I'm going to stay after. And I'm happy to talk to any of you about that case and answer your questions that I can, because I can answer some questions, many questions probably. But I don't ever want to put the judge in a compromised position. And he and I actually, we spoke this morning about, you know, what we could talk about and what we couldn't talk about, since we knew we would be sitting here together. And in my view, I am part of the criminal justice system, and I have my role, and the judge has his role. Law enforcement has their role, and the defense attorneys have their role, and we're all equally important in making sure that justice is done. So anyway, thank you so much for having me tonight, and I did want to address the bail question, because I know that was on a lot of people's minds, so I just wanted to explain to you from my perspective kind of what happens in the courtroom when we go to court. So if somebody is arrested and charged with a crime, then they have their initial appearance in court, and if they're in jail, then they have their appearance usually on a video, and the judge can see them, and they have their defense attorney. And my job is to advocate on behalf of the state, and it's not 100% of the time that we ask for bail. Most of the cases that I handle, I'm asking for bail because it's usually a series of crimes, or a serious crime, or it's somebody with criminal history and so on, just because of the kind of cases that I personally handle. I handle many of the more serious cases, or many of the serious crimes, like the situation down here in Brennan. So usually in the cases that I have, I'll be asking for bail. But essentially what happens generically is that we come into court, and we have the charging documents that lay out the charges. We know about the person's criminal history, the court knows about their history. We know about the warrant history, the court knows about that. We make our own judgment about what we want to recommend to the court in terms of the conditions of release. Conditions of release doesn't mean the person will be released. It's a set of conditions, one of which could be bail. Other conditions include don't have contact with with the victim, don't go to a particular location, appear in court as directed, and so on. It's a court form that we fill out. One of those conditions can be bail. And so what I do as a prosecutor, and I've only been doing this for 28 years, so I've only seen a few things, but I will try to size up the case the best I can. I will look at the person's criminal history, and then I will make my own judgment about what I think is either their risk to re-offend, which I consider to be a danger to the community. Danger doesn't just mean being violent, right? I look at their risk to re-offend. Are they a violent person? Are they a risk to an individual person, right, that they had a fight or something with to approach that person or do something, or to tamper with a witness, as the judge said, or interfere with the judicial process? Are they a risk not to come to court? So there I'm looking at their warrant history. I'm looking at their prior convictions. What are those convictions for? Did they have a hit and run? If they had a hit and run, that tells me something about what they think about the whole judicial system or whether they're likely to come. Anyway, that's what I argue. I look for crimes where they gave false information to the police, right? Because that tells me something about whether I can believe what they're saying or whether they're going to try to get out of something. So I look at their whole criminal history and then I make my argument. I say, we believe that the bail should be set in the amount of $25,000 because look at these offenses, these are very serious. Look at the criminal history, this is very serious. Look at the warrant history, 2 warrants, 1 is still outstanding. And so for those reasons, we believe that this amount, 25, that whatever the amount is that I think is appropriate. And I think that that's what the prosecutor's office does, right? So that's how it happens. So I make my argument, and then the defense attorney will say something like, well, they should be released on their personal recognizance, or they might say, well, some amount of bail is appropriate, they're asking for too much, it should be less than that, they can't afford that much, you know, whatever. They'll make their argument about the bail, or I've worked with this person before, I know that they will come to court, they've promised, and so on, right? And then ultimately, then the judge decides. And sometimes the judge says, yes, I agree with the prosecutor, 10 factors, you know, bail, 25,000. Or the judge will say, I agree, they should be released on whatever the judge decides, or somewhere in the middle, and then the judge sets the conditions of release, and those may include bail, and that all goes on a form that the defendant has to sign, right, at the jail before they can be released if they post the bail, right, which gets posted at the jail. Then they're released on those conditions, one of which was the bail, and then they have to come to their next court date. And then if they don't come to their next court date, then I get up and I say, remember when I said, and I used to, I haven't done this with Judge Mack, but I used to do it with Judge Harper, when he would say things like, the prosecutor asked for that much, and I'm going to take a chance on you, and I'm going to do this. I wrote it in quotation marks. And then when we would come back, I said, we asked for this much bail, and now they didn't come, and you said, and then I would say the words, and then, you know, and then if a person doesn't come, you know, when they're supposed to, then the judge issues a warrant for their arrest, and then when we find them, and what our office does is that they posted bail at the time that happens, we ask to have the bail forfeit. And that's usually a bonding company, and they get real anxious about that, because there goes their money. So I've also learned a lot over my career about how to deal with the bonding companies. And I said, by the way, if your person didn't come to court, you better go start looking, because they have timelines that they run on. It's like 60 days or whatever. Otherwise, they're going to lose their money. So I've learned how to motivate people to go find people. But that's basically, that's who I am, that's what I do, and that's what actually happens in the courtroom, right, when we're doing that. And then ultimately, the judge makes the decision. You know, it's not foolproof. We don't know. Sometimes people surprise us. They show up for all their court hearings, they do everything they're supposed to do, and I say, look, everyone was right. And then sometimes it goes the other way. So I just really wanted to address that, because I heard your bail question. I think there's a lot of questions about that. And just to tell you also that we do consider, as the judge said, if they have posted bail in other cases or their warrant history and so on. And I can talk to you more about this case that you're interested in, because that person has a case in Kelbon County and now a case in Kitsap County. And people wonder how that happens. It does happen like that sometimes, but usually at some point it stops. So now it's stopped. Unfortunately, you know, a lot of other stuff happened in the meantime, right? So, did anybody else ask a question that the judge answered that I should also answer?
Okay,
Or if there's another question.
we've got a couple of outstanding questions from before, so I think at this point it is fair game to say either Judge Mack or Prosecutor Phillips could answer the questions. I think this gentleman over here is next.
And could you guys try to just paraphrase the question in your response?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Earlier, you kind of implied that the drug problem, fentanyl problem, is behind possibly a lot of the crime that we're seeing. And my question is, I'm glad to hear we have a drug court. How easy is it to divert people to that drug court? Can you do it with simple property crimes? And have you ever seen the successful application of Richard's law, the law that allows a family member to petition for the involuntary commitment of their loved one? Basically, if the drugs are the problem, what are we doing to improve our ability to force people through treatment?
The latter question I haven't, and I don't know why I haven't, and I would invite it, right? There's a law, and so if somebody has a family member who is deep in their addiction and you believe they're gonna OD at any time or, you know, whatever, and they're just not, because there are a lot of people who haven't committed the crimes, they're just suffering in that regard. And, you know, I would say if there's a law, bring a petition regarding this. As far as gaining entry into drug court, yeah, property crimes qualify if it's the underlying, you know, it really is, in my opinion, and I can appreciate the frustration around, I don't want to hear more about mental health or substance use treatment. I want the crimes to stop. I want the crimes to stop too. Prosecutor Phillips wants the crimes to stop. I want us to invest our money in stuff that works so that the crime stops, like getting to the issue. Sometimes people just grow up in criminalized, they're just, right, like their family, their parents committed crimes, their grandparents committed crimes, like that's just sort of a value, or we don't have faith in our institution, we don't go to school, I mean, that's out there, right? We see that, like generational crimes. And how do you stop that cycle? And I think social media is sort of throwing fuel on the fire in a lot of ways, where people can spend all day looking at their algorithm that's telling you don't trust all of your institutions, and they're just thinking, yeah, forget it, that guy looks like he's got a nice truck, I think I'll go take it. You know, and so how do you stop that? And you know, I think when the underlying issue, and then sort of I went on a tangent with the generational crime, but when the underlying issue substances, we see it for sure. When people actually address that, they do stop committing crimes. And however that happens, they can go get treatment when they're in prison. They can go to drug court. We have treatment at our jail. And to be honest, we don't necessarily need to go down the deep role of the best way to treat fentanyl, but I think you have to treat a fentanyl addiction probably differently than you treat some other addictions. And that's a hard, this is a terrible pun, it's a hard pill for me to swallow, because I struggle with the idea of, hey, let's treat people who've got an addiction with medication, where some of the cause of the addiction was our pharmaceutical industry in the first place. You got the opioid epidemic, and then you have people who are struggling with addiction to fentanyl, and so the most effective way to treat that is with Suboxone and treatment. So anyway, I'm just interested in addressing the underlying issues for sure.
So, yeah, we support the drug court, and your elected prosecutor is James Kennedy, and he is our staff person who staffs drug court for us, and it's a whole team, right? It's treatment providers, and the judge, and the prosecutor, and the defense attorney, all sit in there and they staff cases. They talk about them. Yeah, the sheriff's office, right? Law enforcement is there as well, right? and they talk about the cases, and they talk about people who are interested in drug court and whether that person would be a good fit and so on. And then eventually the person can petition for drug court. So they only do that because they already have a pending case. So it's a way that drug court itself is a way that a case gets resolved. So we do not have drug court for people who have a substance use disorder, who have not committed a crime and are not in our system. So, I mean, I think the word court tells me that, but it's an alternative resolution of the case. So we support it, and we see when it works, we see when it doesn't, and yes for property crimes, yes for pretty much everything. I know in our office we don't support drug court for offenses involving driving offenses and certain other offenses, but otherwise, you know, because a lot of theft is driven by drug addiction. So that's usually how it comes up, is that the staff talks about it and what are the underlying problems, and is this a good solution?
So I'm going to ask a follow-up, just from my experience. Very briefly, my legal career was on the same path as Judge Mack. In 1990, I did an externship for the Solving AGs for child abuse, neglect, dependency, and termination cases. And my experience with that when I left was the only thing I felt really good about was the termination cases, because otherwise we were taking very stressed families and adding stress, and they came out stressed, still the same problems, still the same drug dependencies, which were even then at the heart of most of it. Do we have enough resources to address those issues in the community once someone gets into that system? Are there the right things there to address those dependencies, or do we need more?
Yeah, no, if somebody's, if it was regarding substance use generally, if somebody's willing and they're able or they're court ordered to go to substance use treatment, I would say we have adequate resources. Regarding mental health services, we don't. If you're struggling with mental health, it's going to take you a month or two to get any kind of support in that regard. And not to mention, you know, somebody to provide supervised visits for you and your kids, or parent coaching, or pretty low on a lot of those resources out here.
Andrew had a question here.
So I represent a local HOA. And my question and my concern has to do, I happen probably in this room to be among the few people who does not own a gun, all right? But a lot of people do. I worry about in my HOA somebody doing what they need to protect themselves and getting themselves in trouble in that process. What can we, the average citizen, do regarding knowing when we make a call to the county, it could be 45 minutes to an hour easily before we see an officer? What can we legitimately do to protect ourselves, whether we have a gun or not? And I have a secondary question. How do we handle when we have suspected drug houses in our community? What can we do relative to that, reporting it? And I understand if there isn't proof, it's hearsay. But what can we, the average citizen, do in this regard?
Right, so I'm going to address the second question first. So trust your instincts, right, and trust what you see, and call the police. Many times I've seen many cases where a neighbor or somebody else saw something that they didn't think was right. And they saw people coming and going, whatever. And you could be wrong. Not you,
right.
But you could be wrong. But there are people who work for you whose job it is to figure that out. Right? If there's criminal activity afoot. And so I would encourage you to call. You can call the non-emergency number at the sheriff's office, or you can call. So Detective Sergeant England, he is a supervisor over the detectives. I know that he's also, he would have probably been the first line person here tonight if he could be here, but I know that he takes community calls, and tips are really important. So when you see things like that, you know, and I don't think I'm taking you seriously, you know, when you say that you think you're seeing something like that. You could be right, but I know that they would want to take your call and want to look into it and would take you seriously. I hope that they would, right? So we always tell people not to become their own investigators because you can get in a lot of trouble, right? Or be putting yourself in a dangerous situation, and so we don't want to encourage people to do that. So we want to encourage people to call law enforcement and tell them what they're seeing or hearing. And I heard what you said. You said, well, that's just hearsay, right? Because it's just like people talking about something. But that happens usually because you see something that doesn't seem right. Or you might talk to a neighbor and they might say, well, I talked to somebody who actually spoke to the person and heard this. So hearsay is like it's a legal term, and it gets thrown around a lot. It gets a bad rap, okay? So when oftentimes people hear something, hearsay just means it's not maybe admissible in court because the person isn't there to be cross-examined or whatever. But that doesn't mean it's not legitimate information that could be followed up on, right? And that could result in other evidence being obtained. So I would encourage you or your neighbors or whoever the folks are who suspect something to tell somebody. And you could get information back that says, oh, we've been looking into that. Let me tell you what's really going on. They're working on something or other. I don't know. Or they can say, yeah, let us look into that. Can you give us the names and telephone numbers of some other people we might want to talk to? So part 2, firearms. Again, I don't encourage people to, well, I can't, you know, I'm probably gonna stay probably very far away from this. I mean, there are laws on self-defense and so on, and if you are a responsible gun owner, you know what your rights and responsibilities are. So I can't give you any other advice about that. If you have a particular situation that you're not sure about, again, I would suggest you call law enforcement and they can probably give you some advice about that. But I know that I've been to, I think it was a long time ago, the Phillips Community Center. I went to a program put on by, I want to say it was Tom Brotherton. And he was there, and I mean, this feels like about 1 million years ago. Yeah, were you there?
I was there.
Yeah, I think it's like when I first moved here. I don't know, maybe it was a little after that. I just heard it was at the community center, and it had to do with gun rights and what you could do if people were asking about self-defense. And I thought, oh, well, I just want to go and hear about this because I think this is, you know, something that just in my job and my life and everything would just be interesting to know about. And it was helping people. They were talking about paperwork and just all kinds of different things. But anyway, that was just my musing on that. But call law enforcement. That's what I'm telling you.
There was a question over here, this gentleman, Jackie.
Kind of a simple question. Now, the case that you're actually working on, I don't want you to get into specifics, but in the news media it said that motivation for breaking into the post office was to see if people had filed for being out of the area holding their mail. Because my first thought was, why would anybody go into a post office? Now it's a federal crime. They got the cameras, and you know, it seems like you wouldn't get away with it. So I was just wondering, is that common or is that rather unique?
We'll talk after.
Okay.
I'll tell you all about it.
There was a question about the gentleman, Marcia.
Marcia, you were talking about the study on additional deputies in the South Sound, and you said that you didn't agree additional deputies were needed, and you had another thought, but you never really said what that was.
Right. I think, and I think this is somebody else mentioned this actually. I think the judge did. Because of our geography, there is no number of people really that would ever be enough. I think the most important, because there are some nights and some days when deputies have few calls a day for service. Then there are other nights that get very busy, right? Or you could have a special event like something happened in Port Hadlock tonight and they had to call some people in. So we can't, and I'm not an expert on staffing, but I can say that in my office as a prosecutor, we have sometimes when we're super busy. Today was a super busy day. We were in court for a really long time, right? And we could have had 6 lawyers there, but we don't always need 6 lawyers, right? Some days we only need 1 lawyer. So we have to kind of staff in our office for the average amount of work that we have. It's like in any job. Some days are super busy, other times you're not. If you run a business and you do construction or something, you can't staff up all of it and have all of the staff all the time. So I think that that's kind of the way that I think about the sheriff's office and also law enforcement in Port Townsend, is that they need to staff for what they're usually doing in their usual call volume, and that when, you know, something big happens, they need to call people in from home. And then there will be days when they're completely maxed out and they are at a priority call and everyone's there and they can't come to your house about your stolen car. That will just happen. So in terms of the staffing, I don't think that it's realistic to just, you know, have like, you know, 10 more deputies, because first of all, it costs a lot of money, and second of all, you don't need those 10 deputies all the time. So I think it's like any business, you have to prioritize things and decide, and I don't speak for the sheriff's office, I'm just saying generally, you have to prioritize things and prioritize your service and decide how you're going to deploy your people. But just from what I've seen, the answer isn't more, it's not more people.
We used to live in Thurston County. Thurston County is a lot more populated than Jefferson and has a, you know, I don't know about size-wise, but serious calls to the sheriff's department in Thurston County, you could expect at least 15-minute response. I don't care where you were in the county. And yet, down here, I'm hearing people say at least an hour sometimes. I don't think that's adequate coverage for the taxes we pay. I think it's terrible.
So I encourage you to contact your elected official who's in charge of that department. I mean, I'm sorry, I can't speak for him, you know, and I can only speak for my office, you know, when I'm here tonight. Yeah, I know that sounds like a cop-out, but I can't speak for him. Yeah.
No pun intended there.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, but yeah. Yeah.
So I had a question from an anonymous person in the audience. Both your county employees, so maybe you can answer this. When we want to look at a sewer issue or a wetland issue, there's a great map for us to go on, a GIS map, and you can click and it's interactive. Is there a map that would follow and track call volumes and property crimes and reported crimes the same way that we can track other things environmentally and permit related? And if not, what would be the appropriate department to speak to, and how would we engage on visualizing that data that's already been collected? The anonymous person hopefully heard that.
So that does not exist, and it would be very interesting. I mean, I'd be interested as a citizen to be able to see that information. Our office doesn't keep it because we keep information about cases that we're prosecuting, right, and that are in court. So that wouldn't give you all the data I think you're looking for, because sometimes people want to see crimes even if they're not solved, right? Because it's like a cluster of burglaries, even if they're not. We only see the cases that are solved, right? So again, I think the people who would have that information and keep those statistics would be, you know, the police agencies probably have access to that through JEFCON or however they keep track of their calls. But we only see, and the judge only sees, you know, the cases that come to court, right? Yeah.
So, the question here, realize you guys are not the folks in the squad car, but there's a focus on property crime. For a long time, police were limited as to who they could pursue. That's been somewhat remedied, Senate Bill 52 last year, but it still focuses primarily on violence and safety issues, sexual assault, domestic violence, DUI. There's not an ability to pursue a car that has been stolen without one of those things, or a break-in or some other just pure property crime. Do you believe that would be helpful to have that ability for you, for you folks to address the crime we're seeing in the community, or not relevant, or what is your thought?
So I've been a prosecutor here under all of these different scenarios, right, where we had the ability to pursue, and then it was changed, and then it was amended again. And people got wind of that. Criminals did. They're not done. And they got wind.
Some of them are done.
Well, they're done.
There are some really done.
Yeah. But I mean, they pay attention. So I think people knew about that, and people took advantage of it. And I think that's part of why the law was changed, right? And I think that, I don't know, I certainly understand the danger in police pursuits. When I practiced in a larger jurisdiction, I saw a lot of things go wrong. But I think that in our opinion, and I'm here speaking for our office, not just for myself, but that we thought the law was fine before. There was I think
Before the last amendment, or before?
no, before.
Okay.
And I think that there were a lot of things going on at the time that the law was changed. It wasn't just having to do with the danger of pursuits. There were a lot of things that happened with people really speaking up about social justice issues, about who was being pursued, about the reasons for pursuits, and I think a lot of those were legitimate grievances that need to be addressed. I don't know if changing the pursuit law was the way to do that, but I think that I certainly understood some of the motivation there and some of the concerns that people had about who was being pursued and why it was happening. That has not been my experience. I'm not saying that's not a real experience. I'm sure that's a real experience, right? But the way I've seen it play out in our county is something different. It's people taking advantage. They'll be in a stolen car, and then they flee, and then they jump that car and get another car, steal another car, and flee. And I think usually what ends up happening is, it gets to a level of dangerousness that the police are not allowed to pursue them, to find them. So it ends up, escalating anyway. But just to go back, one of the reasons for the change in the law had to do with people's legitimate grievances and concerns about how law enforcement was sometimes using it, or that was their experience of that. So I'm not devaluing that at all. I'm just saying that in my experience in Jefferson County, I never saw that here, and I think that people have gotten wise to it, and it's been taken advantage of. Yeah.
Thank you. There was a question over here somewhere, so I'm referring my eye. Well, that'll work, right there. All right.
My husband was assigned jury duty November 1st through November 15th, never got called. I was assigned jury duty November 16th through November 30th. I've never been called. Are all these cases in November, everybody's pleading guilty and just getting their fine, whether or not?
Yeah, no, that's a great one.
Can you read it?
Yeah, so the question was, she was saying she got called for jury duty, or summoned didn't get summoned because there weren't any cases that went to trial. So there's a bunch of challenges that happened. I think we had a trial scheduled for early November or late October, and without getting into too great of specifics, basically there was some discovery that came out kind of late, where the state got some expert information. It was ballistics on some ballistics information, and so then the defense attorney said, well, we want to send that to our expert. Right? So the state had already lined up their witnesses. I think it was a sort of 2-week trial roughly for the first 2 weeks of November or end of October, early November, I can't remember what it was. And then the defense attorney said, well, I need, so we bumped that one to December. And then, it's sort of like this dance where you have 4 prosecutors who do felonies. Is that about right? About 4 prosecutors who do felonies and about I don't know, 6 defense attorneys maybe, and then there's one court, and then all the law enforcement. So I'll look at a case and I'll say, okay, can this case go to trial? And then the prosecutor might say, this case can't go to trial because, you know, this witness is unavailable. But I'll let you know, you've got one Superior Court judge. I mean, the number of cases that like, even though we don't have a case that's in trial, we did a land use decision appeal that is gonna take, 120 hours. There's divorces that need to happen, there's protection orders, there's juvenile cases. So, there's some weeks, and it's basically generally been this, that there's generally, 6 to 10 trials that happen a year. There's a ton of, the majority of criminal cases don't go to trial. They generally plead or they get resolved in some way, maybe through a therapeutic court or, and there's definitely a lot of other things that are always happening in the court, but that's a great question.
I just want to say I'm really proud of everybody who's here tonight. When we ask for them, they show up. And we had the commissioners meet and greet. They told us that we had more people in Brennan show up than the entire rest of the county put together. So I think that we would like to know, because we would do things. What are the things that you recommend that we do? We talked about cameras a little bit. Maybe it's as simple as finding out if we can write a grant, because maybe some people can't afford to put cameras up. But are there other things that we can do that we will do if we know what they are?
First is just not to leave your car keys right in your car. Prosecutor Phillips was saying, sometimes somebody steals a car and there's a pursuit, and so seriously, Reading, we just had a case, there's a roadblock with law enforcement, they know which way the person's going, person pulls off, runs through the woods, steals another car because somebody just had their car keys hanging out in their, their cup holder. And I'm not, if you like to leave your keys in your car, that's, I'm not trying to promote this thing, but,
Yeah. So I can just tell you what I see of the cases, right, that come through our office. And the things that seem particularly effective to me when I go, oh, this is a great case. This is a winner, right? So usually when that involves like a burglary of a home, there are cameras. And the cameras today are unbelievable, like the image quality that you can get. So I would say cameras. I would say don't just be neighbors, be a community, which you are, right? So I'd say that's the next part. And I would say, I live in a pretty rural area on acreage, and when I go out of town, my neighbors know. You couldn't tell from my house, but my neighbors know. And we have a shared road, and people come up, my neighbors go up and down that road, they know who lives on the road, they know who doesn't live on the road. And so I would just say paying attention, and if something doesn't look right, telling somebody. And so the cases that I see really that are great cases are cases where someone's out of town and their neighbor calls the police, and then we have the camera, and then somebody calls and there's a license plate, and then we find the car, and then we find the owner of the car, and then we get their driver's license, and we look at the picture, and we're like, oh, that's the person from the camera, right? So that's just like kind of close the loop. So it's just what you think it would be. It's just that. It's those really simple things that, to me, take care of 80% of the stuff. The outliers, this really crazy random things that happen, there's almost sometimes no way to protect yourself from those, right? But the things that happen, one of the things I notice as a prosecutor, because I have had a lot of South County burglary cases, residential burglaries, people with either second homes or houses they're not living in full time for whatever reason. People come from other counties here to steal your stuff. So they come from Mason County, and and they come from Kitsap County, and they come to South County to steal your stuff. That's what I see. But when they find out, and start to find out that it's not, and that's because they hear, you know, it's a place I can go, or second homes, or whatever, people aren't around in the winter, or whatever it is. But they will also start to hear, don't go to South Jefferson County. And then the word will get out, and out will go to Mason County, it'll go to Kitsap County, or Clown, or whatever. So I think in the good cases that I see, where I say this is we've solved this case and that we can prosecute it and do something, it's those really simple things that I think you probably already know. It's not there's nothing magic to it, like not leaving your keys in the car. It's some really simple things, and being a community, right, and not just neighbors.
We'll get maybe two more questions here, and then I think we're gonna wrap up. But the woman in the back here, and then
Just real quick, there's so much respect for the judicial and our police force, and we love all of you. But really the bottom line sounds like everybody's out of money and staff. And we're on our own, basically. And so what we've been told is neighborhood watch is the best thing, which is what this nice lady just brought up. But do you think, it seems to me we should have more, we're gonna start focusing, OCT got hit so bad this year. We've had so many thefts, it's been terrible. And we need to develop neighborhood watches per street, not the whole community, per street.
So I believe that the sheriff's office will help you to set up a neighborhood watch. I could be wrong about that, but I thought that I had heard that they will actually come out to help you do that. On the grant part of it, I talked to Dan before I came down, and we talked a little bit about that, and I reached out to some people who I know who work on the federal side of law enforcement to see, because there's a lot of federal money out there for grants too, not just state money. And so I'm looking into whether I can help make some connections for your area because I had heard there are people who might have the time or energy to help write grant proposals for getting money for anything related to crime prevention. I don't know specifically neighborhood watches, but I'm looking into how I can help your community make connections to grant programs and things that might work for Brennan. I mean, I just started this yesterday, so I'm waiting to hear back from people. But on the neighborhood watch, I'm pretty sure that the sheriff's office will help you to set up a neighborhood watch or community group and give you direction and support and advice around doing that. So I remember hearing that somewhere, that they do that.
thank you. Gentleman in the black jacket. Sir, you got a question?
Frederick.
Yeah, I have a very great question now. Is Glenn and Gardner included in the South County? When you keep saying South County, is Glenn and Gardner included in that? Or is it each precinct is separate and they're not included?
So this is just a personal thing for me. When I think about South County, right? I think about crossing Center Road and coming south of 104 to Quilcene and Brennan.
Okay.
I myself,
Gardner.
in my mind, and I know that,
They would like to be included. There's a lot of money and a lot of people there who care.
Yeah.
And they feel like they're being neglected even more than us.
And I can tell you that when I was on the Sheriff's Citizens Advisory Board, we had a representative from Gardner. I don't know if that's still true, but we recognized that that was a distinct community in need of representation. So I don't know if that's still true, but at that time, we really recognized that that was an area that needed its own representation.
Yeah, I think Gardner and Discovery Bay are in that camp. Lynn is actually in Clallam County. Lynn is in Clallam County, but you're right, Gardner and Discovery Bay are in Jefferson, and they feel somewhat isolated. Great. Thank you so much, Professor Phillips and Judge Mack, and I think Dan is going to wrap this up with some things.
I really appreciate both of you guys being here. I want everybody to know that, you know, we spoke to all the different county organizations. When we started this, very small hope that we could get a judge to come down due to all the ethical considerations. It would be easier for him to say, no, that's not right, I can't. And he would have been totally justified. I did not believe that we'd get the prosecuting attorney or the deputy prosecutor to come down, because it didn't seem to me like that was something that was worth their time. And for the both of you to come down makes a huge difference. Okay, thank you. What I want to close with is I want everybody to think for a second. Did anybody walk in here thinking we were going to come out of here with an answer to the problem? No. Nobody thought. What we're going to walk out of here with tonight is a really good understanding that everybody else in this room cares about it. Everybody else is interested. Everybody has spent 2 hours on a Friday night to drive down Mill Road to the Boy Scout camp to come here and listen. So this is kind of the first step. This is kind of phase one in solving these issues. I also think it's really important now for us to put a face to the judicial side of our county, and these are no longer people that just have a title. These are not people that we can kind of think about and say, well, they're crazy and they're allowing crazy things to happen. These are respectable, smart, responsible people that are at the top of the field of the judicial of the county and came down here to do this because they care about it too. And they've said nothing that was shocking or disgusting or out of line. And everybody else sitting in here, nobody argued with each other about any of the things that we were saying. Some people might have disagreements, but there was no argument. None of this kind of crosstalk where people are disagreeing and working against each other. And I know for a fact, because I know a lot of you, we have people with 180-degree opposite political opinions. So this is an issue that kind of crests the political divide. This is an issue that the county cares about. They need our help to help show what we want, to help formulate these plans. And frankly, we're going to have to enact on these plans ourselves. So if you put your name down on the sign-in sheet, you can still do it before you leave. Put your name and your email. We're going to get an email list together. We're going to start a conversation kind of led by the Northwood Canal Chamber of Commerce in opening up this dialogue. These community watch programs need to happen. We need money to do it. So we need grant money to do it. We're going to get a commitment from the prosecutor's office to try to connect us with somebody who may know about these things federally, but it's going to be our responsibility to get the grants written. And it's going to be our responsibility to interface with Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, because they're probably going to have to receive this money to enact these plans that we come up with. So this is something that we all can do. This is proof that these issues can get better. This is proof that this is not a person in the county causing all these problems. And I really thank everybody for coming. You know, we'll do more of these. We'll get y'all out an email and just, yeah, thank you. And Marcia, you're the best moderator. You really set the tone, thank you. But the Boy Scout camp for having us, and Justin and Shelley Andrew and Shelley for starting this whole town hall forum. So we'll start putting things up, and if you want to hang out and chat for a few minutes, I'm sure that'll be acceptable. Josh will start kicking people in the butt when it's time to go. All right, thanks everybody.